Okay, getting my walk in this morning. I wasn't going to walk, but I just wanted to kind of get the cobwebs out, mentally out of my head, right? And just basically feel better before I go to work, okay? And so I thought I'd go ahead and make another video while I'm walking, right? And I mean, obviously, most of the people that look at my videos, right? My day job, I've always had a day job and I've always had a business, right? And I got people working for me, right? I had people working for me, the whole 9 yards, right? And had a truck company and all that, right? I did bathrooms and floors. I did only bathrooms and floors. That's what I did, right? And I had that, right? I did satellite dishes. I've done, oh my gosh, a number of things, right? And but what I want to talk about this morning, right, is another easy, quick, and simple way you can make money, okay? And so, like I was saying, right? So, I know a lot about. I mean, this is what I do as a day job, right? But I like my business and I like side hustling and stuff like that, right? It just it just adds a different dimension to what I'm already doing on my day job, right? So my day job, right? I do space and aerospace engineering. Okay. I know how to build fighter jets and rockets and stuff like that, right? The infrastructure for it, right? My forte or my expertise, let me say it like that. My expertise is in systems engineering and safety, right? And I know avionics pretty well, right? Software, hardware, firmware, right? And software and hardware and firmware integration, right? That's what I know better than anything, okay? And that's what I do every day, okay? It just comes natural for me to do systems engineering. Been doing system engineering and safety for like 27 years, okay? And so, I established my business back in 2004, I believe. I was doing some things prior to that, right? But I officially established my business, the state of Florida, in 2004. I still have that business. I run that business. I use that business and everything right now, okay? And so, and so far, right, this, working in engineering and having a business on the side, right, it has served me well, right? I mean, I've had some hiccups here and there, right? I call them hiccups, okay? With my trucks and stuff like that, right? I had people working for me. They wrecked my Freightliner, and the dude blew my engine up in the dually and stuff like that, right? But like I said, right, I was doing engineering, and I had my flooring business. I still, the thing about these opportunities that I'm talking about, right? I always say, once the sap is in your vein, it never goes away. Okay. And so I know how to procure and install, like, wood flooring and do bathrooms, stone, tile, travertine, and marble, okay? And what I'm saying is, and I don't mean just, in the average house, okay? So I did floors and bathrooms in $5-6 million houses or homes, okay? Most of them was ocean fronts. Okay, big houses on the ocean, or you had a subdivision, right, that was on the ocean. Okay, and I would go in these houses, and we would take down all of the hard surface, and we would take down all of the bathrooms. And we would take these bathrooms, if you will, and just literally pimp them out. Okay, double shower heads, benches, stone, marble, porcelain. I mean, you name it, right? It was kind of sort of like whatever the homeowner wanted. But most of the times, what I did, and this was with flooring and the bathroom, floors and bathrooms, right? I only did hard surfaces, right? And most of the time, the floors that I did was either Brazilian cherry or walnut, right? It was exotic hardwood. Brazilian cherry, walnut, masaranduba. I did a lot of oak and pine as well, okay? But one thing you got to understand is people who have money, they like uniqueness, okay? They like to own and acquire things that are different, okay? And quality, okay? And so that ought to tell you something about me, right? If I was doing floors and bathrooms in $4, $5, $6 million homes, because that's what they cost right now, okay? On the water, right? 5,000 square feet, 6,000 square feet, 7,000 square feet, 7,500 square feet, you know, that sort of a thing, right? And the builders that I was working for, these builders, they average about 4 or 5, at the most, probably about 4 houses a year, okay? You cannot build a lot of houses if you're building 6,000 and 7,000 square feet homes, custom homes, right? High-end homes. I'm talking about high-end, you know, marble glass, stainless steel, you know, double and triple crown molding and stuff like that, you know, all over the house. You know, spiral stairs and so forth, right? So that's what I was into. I did that for about 11 or 12 years, okay? And, but you can make some fairly decent money in flooring, okay? Now, you know, you got to have the tools and stuff like that, right? But what I really want to focus on with this flooring thing right quick, and I'm going to talk some more about flooring. There's a lot that I can share with you, okay, about houses, just houses and real estate in general, okay? My wife is a realtor. She got access to houses and all kinds of things, okay? But if you want to get into flooring, okay, and bathrooms, and I'm gonna start with flooring. I'll talk about bathrooms in a later video, okay? Because this type of work, okay, requires a little bit of perfection, okay? And one of the things that I've learned is if you're going to be good at anything, right? Even aerospace engineering, designing fighter jets and doing modifications and building avionic boxes, right? If you're, and especially safety, if you're going to be good at anything, okay, then it takes time, okay? It takes time, right? It takes time and it takes thought, right? And when you're doing floors, right, you gotta know how you want that floor to look, okay? And so I knew how I wanted the floor to look because I had taken a picture, you know, out of magazines like Veranda and Southern Living and magazines that dealt with coastline living, you know, on the ocean and whatnot, right? I had taken pictures and showed those pictures to the homeowner. And the homeowner basically told me, kind of gave me an idea of what they wanted, the style and the look that they wanted, right? So I did that, right? I reproduced it, okay? In their house, okay? But if you wanna make like maybe $500 a pop, let's say, okay? You want to make $500 a pop dealing with floors, okay? So what you do is you don't have to install them or anything like that, right? You just repair them, right? You would be amazed the number of people that have flooring, that have hardwood flooring in their homes, and particularly in the kitchen, right? Particularly in the kitchen, that spot in front of the sink done got water on it, or it's worn out, or whatever, right? It's just worn down. In the front door where you're coming in and out, it done got water damaged, or it's worn out. Or you got a lot of houses, a lot of them, right, where the floors simply squeak, okay? That's really how I got into doing like the big houses, right? The real big ones is, and I'm sorry, there's a truck in the back. But I got into doing the 5,000 and 6,000 and 7,000 square feet homes by going in, I went in and fixed a repair for a contractor. And this contractor, he was good. He built big, nice houses, okay? High-end homes, okay? And me and my helper, Kevin, right? Kevin Dixon. You don't know Kevin Dixon. I can put his name out there, right? But Kevin was good. Kevin was damn good with flooring and stairs, okay? And so the builder the house was already built, but the stairs squeaked, okay? The stairs squeaked. And he told me, he said, Jimmy, we're almost done with this house, but the stairs squeak. And he said, we can't have that, right? In a house like this, the stairs cannot squeak, right? They got to be solid. So he asked me, could I fix it? I told him, yeah, we can fix it. I had Kevin to look at it, and Kevin said, yeah, we can fix it, right? So what we did is we went in the house, right? And we took down all the treads and risers, right, for the stairs. We took them down. And we went back and we put polyurethane on the risers. I'm sorry, on the stringers. We put polyurethane on the stringers, right? And we got up underneath and screwed the tread to the stringer, right? And we glued and screwed the riser to the stringer, right? And when we got done, the stairs were solid. They were solid. No squeak nowhere, right? We put all that back together and finished it off, okay? Okay? And so, I mean, I was already doing floors, right? But I'm just telling you, that you can do this on the weekend, right? You can make anywhere between $500 to $1,000, maybe even two. But I know for certain you can make $500 to $1,000, right, one day, okay? If you go in there and fix that floor, right? And what you're gonna need to do is, if they got the box, if they got the box with the product ID that's in the attic or in their garage somewhere, or the flooring that was installed initially or previously, right? You just take that product ID and go find that particular type of flooring, or you just cross-reference it and get something as close as you possibly can, okay? And this is going to require you calling like distributors and retail flooring houses and stuff like that, people that sell flooring, okay? And you're gonna need a skill saw, like a wood chisel. You're gonna need some, a flat bar. You're gonna need some tools. You're gonna need a lot of tools, okay? Okay, you're gonna need a lot of tools, but you're going to go in and adjust the saw. You're gonna adjust your saw just about 1/16. Whatever if the flooring is 3/4 solid, right? Okay, you're going to adjust your saw to where you're going to rip you're gonna rip a piece of that board out, right? Because these boards, they shorts, right? they different length, right? But you're gonna take out the whole board, but you're gonna rip that board all the way down, except for about 1/8, or maybe even a 16th, because you don't want to cut into the floor, okay? But you're just gonna rip the board and rip the board. All of the planks that are defective, right? You're gonna just rip the board, and you're gonna rip those boards out of there. You're gonna get your flat bar or and a chisel. You're gonna have a hammer, that sort of a thing, right? And you just basically go back and lace the flooring back in, okay? You lace that flooring back in, right? And if you're up near the counter or the countertops and stuff like that, the way you can't nail it with a nail gun, okay, or nail hammer or a staple. I use a stapler. These staples are probably about 2.5 inch long, okay? But if you can't, that's predicated on the flooring being 3/4 solid, right? But if it's thin gauge flooring or whatever, right, then your staple or your nail is gonna be much shorter, right? It's gonna be long enough though where it can sink down into the plywood, okay? But you're going to replace all those defective planks, right? And the cost of that job is going to be predicated on how much you got to replace, okay? The surface area that you got to replace, okay? And that's why I say, it could be $500. So a simple repair is $500, okay? That's what I would charge, okay? I would charge $500. If it's, if I got to go in there and take up maybe like, 3-4 boards or something like that, I charge $500, okay? If it's anything more than that, it might be $1,000, okay? And you can get all this done in one day, okay? But you gotta know what you're doing. You gotta know how you gonna do the repair, right? It requires a little bit of planning, okay? But on a Saturday, you can go and make $1,000, okay? You can make $1,000, and if you really interested, right, or want to get a little bit aggressive with it, right, you can start doing it every day, okay? You can have customers lined up the way you go and repair their floors, right? You go out, you do an estimate, you take a look at it, right? You estimate, you see what it's going to cost, see what it's going to take. You may have to, and with this deal, you have to spend a little bit of money. You're gonna have to go and go do the estimates and all that. You're not gonna charge them for the estimate, right? But you're going to do an estimate and you're gonna give them the estimate, right? And the other thing you're going to do is you're gonna get a check from them, okay? Because they're going to buy, once you find the materials, they're going to cut you a check. Let's say the job is $1,000, okay? You might ask for $500 up front just to get started, okay? Because you got to go, and it may be more than that. Flooring is very expensive, right? So it depends on how much the flooring costs. You may have to buy a whole box of flooring, and a box of flooring might be $5-6 a square foot. And you might have 80 square feet in that box, okay, or something like that, right? So you got to get some money from them up front, okay? I used to do this all the time, right? I used to go in and do an estimate. Let's say the job was like $6,000 or something like that. It wasn't repair. They wanted me to lay down, they wanted me to lay maybe 1,000 square feet or something like that, right? But I had jobs that were $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 when I was flooring, okay? But if I went in and the job was like maybe $6,000, $10,000 or whatever, right? Okay. I ask for some money. I go buy the materials, right? And I have a percentage added onto the material plus my time ripping and running to go get the materials, okay? So even before I started that job, I would have about $2,000 in my pocket, right? Plus the money that I needed to acquire all of the floorings, the glue, the nail, or whatever I needed to get, right? I did this all the time, okay? And so I'm gonna talk more about this, right? I'm gonna talk more about this, and I'll show you the tools and stuff like that you need, if you're up for the task. And and then we may talk about bathrooms, okay? Really high-end bathrooms, that's laced out, with porcelain, with granite and marble and stuff like that. You got benches, you got double showers, you got body jets, you got all kind of stuff. And I'm not going to get into all that, right? But I'm just going, when I get to the showers, I'm just going to talk about how to install a shower and how to make it really, really nice. Okay. And so I had a website. It was called Hardwood Floor and Tile Buyers. Okay. I had a website. It was called Hardwood Floor and Tile Buyers. Okay. It was a static site. I just used the site so I could show people my work. Right. Okay. And Lumber Liquidator, I had their name on the site. Okay. I had their name on the site. I had Lowe's, Home Depot name on the site, and I wasn't trying to compete with them because that wasn't my market. Okay. My market was doing things unique and stuff like that, right? But if I ran into someone, and I did many, many times, they just wanted, for an example, they just wanted travertine. They wanted the whole house done in travertine, right? 2,000 square feet, 4,000 square feet or something like that. Or they wanted, a 20-inch porcelain tile plates and stuff like that, right? And I would do it, okay? But I wasn't trying to compete with Lowe's, Home Depot or anything like that, right? Because many times the people that was at Lowe's, Home Depot, and they're looking around, trying to get their floor installed, they're not going to pay me what I was going to charge them, okay? And so anyways, you can make a quick, $500,000, maybe even $1,500. You can make that very quickly, on the weekend. You can go ahead and do it on a Saturday, okay? You can plan it one week and you can go and do the install the next week, okay? And like I said, this is just to give you some ideas on, how you can generate income, right? And I think I said this in a previous video, right? But see, I quit engineering. I walked out, okay? And I went and started doing floors and bathrooms with some of the builders that was building these high-end homes, the oceanfront homes. I quit, right? And I started doing floors and bathrooms full-time, right? I had a crew of hard surface guys that did flooring, and then I had a crew of guys that did stone, marble, travertine, granite, marble, travertine, that sort of a thing, right? And we would go into these houses, after the construction had progressed to a certain point, and we would go in and put in the infrastructure and come back and that sort of a thing, right? And when the house was ready, I would go in and put down, I would go in and finish off everything, put down all the flooring, finish off the bathroom and everything, right? And I made money at it, right? I made money at it. And so, and then the financial market got locked up. This was like 2007, 2008, I jumped back into engineering, right? I was still flooring, but I wasn't flooring as strong, okay? I wasn't flooring as strong, but I jumped back into engineering because at that time, right, builders were pulling up out of these subdivisions like crazy, okay? And particularly, I had one, I had a subdivision. I don't know if you guys know anything about St. Joe. St. Joe they build little small, what I call high-end communities, these little enclaves that, as you get off of the main, or you drive off of the main road and you start driving to the ocean, toward the ocean, right? They have these little small communities scattered about, right? But St. Joe is a publicly traded company, right? And in the state of Florida, they got high-end neighborhoods and subdivisions all over the place. And, a subdivision could just be houses, right? It could be one road, right? Or a street, right? With houses and stuff like that on each side, right? It may have a grocery store, it may have a bank or something like that, right? But and somewhere, but not in the neighborhood. You got your restaurant, you got to get in your car and drive to that, right? But I had 3 subdivisions, and each subdivision was just one road in, right? One way in, one way out. But it had houses on each side of the road, and it led down to the ocean, okay? St. Joe gave me three subdivisions, right? And each subdivision had about, each subdivision had about a dozen houses, okay? As I think about it, it could have been a little bit more, right? But it wasn't a lot, okay? And they told me that the drawing called for 5/4 white oak, 5/4 white oak, right? I believe it was either 5/4 white oak or 5/4 quarter stone white oak, right? Which I couldn't find. I couldn't find it, right? I looked and looked and looked and I couldn't find it. So my engineering buddy, he was an older guy, right? We were building thread emitters for fighter jet, for fighter pilots to train, right? So they could train, right? And so they can learn how to dogfight, okay? So we were building thread emitters, right? So my buddy, right? And this guy, he had a farm. He ran a farm. Now he was like one of the most senior guys in our group, okay? But George, I call his first name, but George had a farm that he ran, and he had people working for him every day, okay? But he also was like vice president of engineering, okay? And so George told me, he said, look, I was in Italy about 3 months ago, okay? And my Italian friend gave me this sample board. And the sample board, George gave me the sample board. And so I looked at the sample board, and I'll show you a picture of it. I got it at my house down in Florida, okay? And I said, wow. And it was all exotic hardwood. All of it was exotic hardwood, right? Real hard type wood, right? Beautiful wood. And so George said, look, you can find 5/4, He said, take this and see what you can do with it, right? So I took it, right? And I knew a guy in Italy. He was an Italian guy. He had a sawmill down in Paraguay, right? So I told him what I was doing, right? And he told me to come down. He told me to come to Paraguay. I was in Florida, right? So I got on the airplane, and get this, George gave me the miles so I could get to Paraguay, okay? Right? George gave me some of his miles so I can go to Paraguay, right? So I got on the airplane and went to Paraguay. I was gonna go to Paraguay anyway, okay? But George wanted in. He wanted to kind of help me and sort of to be a part of it, right? So I went to Paraguay, and I ran into Angelo. Angelo met me at the airport. This is an Italian guy, right? Who was the friend of the guy that George met in Italy, okay? Just showing you how relationships work, okay? And so that guy in Paraguay, the Italian guy, treated me extremely nice and very well, right? He paid for my hotel while I was there. He paid for every meal that I ate, and he had me a chauffeur that drove me around to his land and his property and his sawmills. And he told me that he can supply 5/4 for the subdivisions that St. Joe was building, these ocean fronts that they were building, okay? And so he also wanted me to become the distributor for the southeastern part of the United States. Now, at that time, I didn't have that kind of foresight and vision to take that and run with it, right? And I told him, I said, okay, yeah, I'll think about it, right? So I brought all of that back, and me and George, right, we sat down and drank coffee, and we talked about it. And George said this, he said this just like this. He said, Jimmy, that's a hell of an idea, okay? He said, do you know you can, when it comes to nice high-end flooring and wood and molding and cabinets and things like that, you can sew the whole area up, right, from Texas all the way to Florida. You can have it sewed up, right? You're the guy, right? And I said, yeah, George, man, you're right, okay? but I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it at the time. Okay. I saw it later on. Okay. I still got a relationship with the guy. Okay. In fact, I got a relationship with both guys. Every year, the guy in Paraguay, he send me a Merry Christmas card every year. Okay. And so anyway, long story short, right, I just wanted to share with you some of the things that I've experienced, like I said, right. I've been in like 12, 13 different countries. Okay. And, I've been in engineering for 27 years. I built my own house. I know how to build houses. I know how to acquire houses and stuff like that, right? And some of you might say, well, Jimmy, man, why aren't you doing all of this, right? Well, I'm doing what I want to do, right? I'm doing what I want to do. I feel like I can go do anything I want to, okay? But, at that time, it was the chase that was in me. It was the opportunities and it was the chase. And here's the most important thing I want to leave you with, okay? And that is, you got to be open. Mentally, you got to be open. You gotta create the mindset and put yourself in a mental state position, okay, to where you see opportunity everywhere you go. You see opportunity all around you, okay? Okay? That's why I'm helping you right now. I know that this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to help you, okay? And so most of the time, when I go somewhere, right, I see opportunity. I can go into a low-income neighborhood, right, and see huge opportunity. I'm telling you what I know right now. I'm talking about huge opportunity. I'm in Huntsville right now. As I drive around Huntsville, I see opportunities everywhere. Everywhere. Okay? So, that's it for right now, right? We'll talk some more later on, and have a great day. Thank you.